Hi everyone and welcome along. Today we're going to paint some lovely bumblebees. Seeing as all the flowers are coming out, the bees are out too. So grab your paints and let's get started. We're going to start this tutorial a little differently because I've been sent a set of watercolours by a company called Maya Art. Now this is not sponsored, I've not been paid for this, but they wanted to know if I would do a review of their watercolours, if I thought they were any good. And the good news is I think these are absolutely fantastic. Maya is a Chinese art supplies company and these are solid watercolours. Now the only challenge with me not being a Chinese speaker, identifying the colours with their very handy colour chart is a little bit of a challenge. And of course I've often talked about how when watercolour is in a pan, it is going to look very different on the page. So what they really cleverly do is they give you a little watercolour sheet to fill in. So I did this yesterday. You can see here, we match up all the colours, and it is amazing how vibrant the colours are when they have a bit of water added to them. So I'm going to do the bee painting today using the Maya watercolours, but what I've experienced so far is really positive. I really love how vibrant the colours are, and that's the big thing I look for. That shows a real quality of colour. Also the pans, it just looks really pretty for a start, and there's a lot there, there's a lot of pigment there, a lot of paint, so you're going to be able to use these colours for a long time. Now the only thing I find slightly lacking with this is a palette, a use of a palette, because in my normal colour palette I have the lid where I mix all the colours, but this clear plastic lid isn't quite what I want for mixing colour, so I will put my own little sort of ceramic palette in just to mix my colours. The other cool thing you get in the set is you get a lovely HB pencil, which I've sharpened. I just really like the little details. I think the design is very nicely done. And a rounded point, size 4 probably, brush. So you get those included with the set. If you like the look of these, then we do have a link to it below. But as I said, this is not sponsored. This is just they very kindly sent me a set of watercolours to try, and that's what I'm doing. So let's get started. I'm using my Maya paintbrush as well, so I'm just going to wake up my colours in the palette, and I'm going to just transfer them over to my little ceramic palette. So painting bumblebees, we're doing bumblebees specifically today, so there's lovely fluffy bees, and I'm doing them in my loose watercolour style, but there is most definitely a technique to these. I was having a good old practice yesterday, and it actually involves a little bit more sort of restraint than just say with my robins, where we just sort of splosh the colour on and enjoy watching it move. So we're going to do 3 bumblebees, and I'm going to do them in slightly different shapes. Now I've found doing a little pencil shape, almost like drawing a croissant, like a little sort of French pastry thing, is a really helpful guide. Now this pencil is HB, but I'm doing it very, very faintly as possible. But the most important thing is that you've got this kind of little kidney bean croissant shape, and then just a little sort of out for where the wings are going to go. So I'm going to paint another one sort of down here, another croissant shape. And we're going to have wings coming out the side, and then of course we'll do one sort of from above. So this one is not so much a croissant, this is more of a sort of snowman, I suppose, but need to make sure that we place in a bit of sort of wing shapeage. So this will all make sense, but we start with a fairly faint yellow. So I've got I'm going to refer to them in the colours that I'm familiar with, because this is what I know. So we've got a cadmium yellow to start off with, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a very faint sort of dilute yellow sort of section. On this one, 2 yellow sections here, and I want a little bit of orange just to dab in the sort of smaller parts there. And then I want to pick up maybe a little bit of a shadow, so I've got a kind of grey colour here, and I'm just going to mix a fraction of a sort of grey yellow colour, and I'm going to pop it in the bottom there. And I'm using sort of the outline as a guide, but I now, with a clean wet brush, so I'm just going to sort of fluff things a little bit around the edges. Essentially, I want these bees to look like they're beautifully blended and things, but there's a practical challenge that comes with painting black and yellow watercolour in stripes and not having it go all over the shop. So I'm allowing that to just sit for a little bit whilst I paint my second bee. And then a little bit of the sort of greyish yellow towards the bottom. Just give these a bit of a fluffy edge. Now, I've got two bees here and I'm pretty happy with how long the yellow's been sat there, so I'm going to pick up a bit of black, and I'm also going to pick up a little bit more of that sort of very dark grey blue tone, because I like the idea that these bees have got just a little bit of something other than just pure black in their black stripes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take very little on the brush, and I am going to just pop it in there, and you'll see even after letting it sit for a while you've still got wetness, and just by allowing it to just kiss the edges you're getting a lovely soft blend which gives us this gorgeous watercolor, loose watercolor bee, but it's not going so far that it's going crazy, because that is the danger. And then we have the head of the bee, and at the moment this color is quite sort of grey blue, and that's great, and we're going to sort of let it stay like that. So I'm just going to paint in this one as well. So you're basically filling in those gaps. The yellow stripes, I always do the yellow stripes much larger, partly because the colour is going to bleed in, but also because that's just how I like to do it. I think it looks a bit more cheerful. Okay, fantastic. Now I am going to just get some bit more concentrated black there. And now, not too much on the brush again, this time I want to just add, yeah, there we go. Just a few dabs of the more solid black. By putting that lighter black in first, you're sort of creating almost like a safe space for the black, so it doesn't travel too far into the yellow and ruin things. Now, some little legs for our bees, seeing as we're working in this concentrated black. I'm going to just use the tip of the brush and squidge it down, and then have another one. So sort of 3 little joined legs there. Let's do them here as well. 1. It's almost like a sort of painting a string of sausages. and then there's usually one visible up the top there. Lovely. Really happy with those so far. Now, whilst those just dry, let's have a look at our bee down here, because he's a little bit different. So I've got my yellow. It's very important to keep your brushes really, really clean when you're working with these contrasting colours. So I'm just picking up some fresh yellow for my bees. So we're going to do a band of gold over the head there. Just do a little bit of orange. And then a little bit of yellow across the body. And I'm just curving it slightly to give the sense of a rounded shape. I'm not painting in where these wings are. And then my slightly grayer yellow at the base there. Don't forget a little bit of orange just to the edges, just to warm those sort of main actual yellow bits. Lovely. Now we know we need to leave these be, sorry, terrible pun, whilst we wait for the yellow just to dry a little bit. So let's draw our attention back to our bees up here. So the wings, well, the wings are lovely and delicate and transparent. So I'm going to use a really watered down bit of Payne's Grey here, which is a lovely colour, which I don't actually have in my palette usually, which is a crime because it's absolutely gorgeous grey colour that's just got a slightly bluey tone to it. So I've got a very, very dilute bit of colour here. And what I'm going to do in this unpainted space, I am just going to very simply sort of use the colour that is sort of coming off my brush there to paint a very, very loose pale wing. And I don't want too much more detail there, but I will just top it with a tiny bit of black and just a little sweep in there, in the sort of half painted, unpainted little bits. And just a little bit on the edge just to give it a bit more sort of definition. So let's do one up here as well in the space. What we're looking for is trying to get sort of negative space, unpainted space, to give these wings a lovely translucent feel, as well as a tiniest bit of definition on them. Now I think our bee down here is pretty dry, so now with my sort of blue-black mix, I'm going to go in quite dilute again, remember, and just letting it sort of kiss the edges, not getting too involved with the colour. Nice and sort of rough edges. We don't want perfectly sort of stripy bees because that's just not really how it works. Now this one feels like it's dried a little bit, so I just got a wet brush and just giving it the tiniest bit of a smooth. But this up here, this was quite wet, this yellow, so that's working really quite nicely. Now I feel like we could do with a slight more accent of yellow in my bee here, and that's absolutely fine. You can sort of drop it in as you like. And then of course we will add in a bit more of a solid black colour when those are a little drier. But a bee also needs an antennae. I'll move that pencil away now. So I've got a really small brush. It's in fact one of my smallest brushes. It's 10/10, teeny weeny weeny. And I'm just going to pick up some fairly concentrated black on it. And I am going to, first I'm going to draw some little antennae. fun. And then just going to do a tiny sort of suggestion of a sort of shine of an eye. And then now these wings have dried a little, if you want, with a very fine brush, you can pop in a little bit of delicate black definition, but I really urge against doing too much of that, because I think that is where you can slightly ruin the sort of loose watercolour charm of these bees. So this one down here, we need to add in some slightly more solid black. So I'm sort of rolling the brush a little bit. Now, something I haven't mentioned yet is this is a first for me. Not only am I reviewing some watercolour paints, but this is also my first Patreon recommended YouTube tutorial. And what that means is I have now opened up the floor to my Patreons to choose and suggest up to 4 YouTube tutorial subjects a month. So I'm still very much sort of got my seasonal program of things we're going to paint, but I am allowing my Patreons to choose 4 of the tutorials for the month, and this was one of them. So thank you very much to my Patreons for the suggestion. And if you would love to see me painting something of your choice, then all you need to do is become a Patreon, and for as little as £2 a month you can do that. But there are so many more perks to becoming a Patreon, and we're in the process of creating a lovely video to sort of describe all the sort of what it means, because I think a lot of people don't quite see what the difference between Patreon and YouTube is, but there is just so much more really. So I will sort of say no more, because we're putting together a video which will explain it in a far more eloquent way than I'm doing right now. But this is for you Patreons, and of course for the rest of my wonderful YouTube audience who are so supportive, so thank you. What I can't believe is we are now up to over 20,000 subscribers, and it seems like only yesterday that we were celebrating hitting 10,000. So you guys are amazing, thank you. And it's just it's a real pleasure to keep creating these videos for you. So I'm just popping in the wings and the little extra bits there. But what I also want to do today, because bees are present when flowers come place, just changing over my water there, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to put in a little flower as well to this, so the bees have something to play with. So we're going to put in some lavender. So you've just got yourselves a whole extra tutorial. So I'm picking up one of the many greens in my palette. I do like how there's so many different colours in this Maya palette. This is the 36 pan palette that they've sent me. So I'm going to get some blue and some green, mix that together. This is a sort of green gold, sap green kind of colour. Lovely. And then we want some bluey purples, and there's plenty to choose from. So with my size 2 brush, I'm going to do this. Okay. Again, really nice and simple in the sort of similar loose style of these bees. I'm going to begin by painting a very sort of wet line of green, and then I'm going to start at the top and just using the belly of my brush and the fine tip of it as well, just work my way down that stem. So you see I start with the squish down the brush and then into the fine point, squish down the brush, fine point, and then one or two just over the top. Let's pop in another. I think this would make a lovely little spring artwork. What I quite like is the looseness of this lavender. I don't know, it just seems to work. Some flowers look so nice in their sort of loose watercolour format. I might have that one come up a bit further. So yeah, if you draw a stem and then you're like, actually, I sort of feel like it could go a bit higher, you can just fill in the difference with your actual purpley blue colour. So with lavender, I like to sort of do a cluster, and then there's usually one or two that are sort of sat at the bottom. So we'll do one there, and then I think that'll be perfect. We've started to see lots of bees flying around our garden, which is just such a wonderful, wonderful sight. Big fan of bees. And so the last thing to do is, because this bumblebee in the middle here will be fairly dry now, is I can just add some very little lines to the wings. And I think that's all we need really, so there we go. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one. I want to say a big thank you to my Patreons, firstly for the recommendation of this tutorial and also for their support, which enables me to keep creating these videos. And if you enjoyed this, then hit the like button and comment below to let me know how you're getting on. And if you subscribe, then you'll never miss another video. Until next time, bye!